Mark Carney continues to sidestep questions about his past job at Brookfield Asset Management and the use of tax havens. Referring to public documents, Singh says Brookfield, during Carney's tenure, avoided paying more than $5 billion in taxes.
Folks, it seems like every day Mark Carney gets a bigger and bigger target put on his back, and now the NDP are chiming in. As you remember, maybe a month and a half ago, the MP Nikki Ashton came out reporting how Brookfield has been dodging taxes for quite a while. Well, now the NDP have put out a little statement on their website saying Mark Carney has helped Brookfield avoid $5.3 billion in taxes since 2021. Canadians lost an estimated $5.3 billion to Brookfield Asset Management's tax avoidance in the time Mark Carney was at the company. Between 2021 and 2024, Brookfield's annual reports show that they made $23.3 billion USD in income. At Canada's corporate tax rate of 26.4, they should have paid $6.1 billion in taxes, but they only paid $2 billion, leaving a tax gap of $4.1 billion USD or 5.3 billion Canadian. This is the same calculation method that the Toronto Star and Canadians for Tax Fairness have reported, and this is a little chart that they've implemented here. All these numbers are in the millions. And it states one major entity, Brookfield Asset Management Limited, has paid no taxes at all for 3 years. 2 days ago, CTV reported that most of Brookfield's core operations associated with $50 billion in their businesses were registered in a Bermuda building housing a bike shop. Now, we briefly covered that yesterday, but this is Jagmeet talking about it quickly.
Mark Carney, while he was the chair of this company, 4 out of 5 of their businesses were located above a bicycle shop in a small office in Bermuda. It almost sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud.
Now, that sounds ridiculous, but it's not that surprising when you factor that Mark Carney is part of this equation. However, I would be interested to see how much this is going to start shifting the polls, because every day there's something with Carney on this campaign trail, and we are getting a little bit of evidence here that things are moving. Case Strategies here has the Conservatives finally back in the lead at 41% versus Carney at 39%, with the question, if the federal election were held today, which political party would you vote for? And this was actually a larger sample size at 2,021 people participating, but we have polls like this from CTV with Nanos saying Canadians more likely to trust Carney to keep the campaign promises than Poilievre, which is interesting because a lot of his policies that he's implemented so far have been Poilievre's. But it says, trust in the campaign promise. Mark Carney's at 48% here, and Pierre's only at 27%. And it says, when it comes to keeping campaign promises, Canadians are more likely to trust Liberal leader Mark Carney than his Conservative rival Pierre Poilievre, according to the results of a new survey. Now, this was also done in that short window of April 1st to the 3rd, and it only surveyed about 1,239 people. So smaller sample size than this one here. But it says undecided voters were also more likely to trust Carney, with 32% saying they trust the Liberal leader to keep campaign promises versus 10% for Poilievre. Nearly 1/3 of the undecided voters of 31% trust neither. Overall, the Liberal leader Carney has the trust advantage over Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre when it comes to keeping promises. But again, most of his promises that he's put out so far have been things that Pierre said he was going to do. So it's kind of ridiculous that they're saying, oh, he's not going to keep those promises, when Carney has basically taken those promises and already implemented them, or just copy and pasting them. But the most significant part here is later on, where it says Liberals benefit more from the Canada-US tension. Nanos Research survey also found that Canadians were more than 3 times likely to say that the Liberals have benefited more from the tensions in the US-Canada relations. 56% of the respondents identified the Liberals as the party that has benefited most from the friction with the Americans and the US President Donald Trump compared with only 16% who pointed out conservatives. Like, I look at this question or the stat, whatever you want to call it, and to me, it indicates that liberals are not even thinking about the last 10 years. They're simply voting based off of fear of Donald Trump and what he's going to do. And at this point, Mark Carney is just feeding off of that. And we even saw that after the whole Liberation Day from Trump, when he didn't make an announcement in terms of Canada, we were exempt, but Carney still came out and gave this message.
So we're in a situation where there is going to be an impact on the U.S. economy, which will build with time. In our judgment, it will be negative on the U.S. economy. That will have an impact on us. In a crisis, it's important to come together, and it's essential to act with purpose.
So there he is, stoking those embers, keeping that fear kind of alive after saying the relationship is over. But then when he gets questioned later on the next day or so about, so are they no longer our allies? He now has to backtrack and say, well, no. Like, commercially, not so much, but defense-wise, yeah, we still definitely need them.
CBC News, good morning. You have talked about this, the old relationship when it comes to the tight military and security cooperation being over. So what exactly are you picturing, and what does that mean for NORAD?
Well, first and foremost, what I've emphasized has been the commercial relationship, the trading relationship, and the direction of that relationship. It's clear that that strategy has tremendous risks, would be misguided in my view, and misguided and create tremendous risk. There may be certain sectors where that's the case, but as an overall approach, that view, that relationship's over. As I just said, our military and security relationship is still, with the United States, is still our most important one.
I listen to this guy and he is just a walking contradiction. Either he does one thing and then says another, or vice versa. And we even saw that earlier today, because about a week ago, Pierre came out with the announcement saying that for anybody who's traveling, they were going to get it covered about $4,000 for tradespeople.
Let me describe the problem we have right now. We have a lot of traveling trades workers, but they can only write off a total of $4,000 a year in costs for their travel. Some of them spend tens of thousands of dollars traveling across the country, but they can't claim it. We have a very simple principle in our income tax system. You get to write off the costs you incur to earn the income that's being taxed. Very simple. But they can't do that. And so today, I'm announcing, in the spirit of putting Canada first and backing boots, not suits, our Conservative government will pass the Tax Fairness for Traveling Trades Workers Act, which will allow trades workers to write off the full cost of their food, transportation, and accommodation to go anywhere in Canada doing their jobs. There will no longer be a $4,000 cap. They will not have to stay overnight in order to be eligible for the write-off, and they will only have to travel 120 kilometers for the write-off to be eligible, rather than the current 150 kilometers.
Now, the Liberals wanted to scrap this apprenticeship grant. However, earlier today, Mark Carney came back saying the exact same thing as Pierre, but instead he doubled the amount to $8,000.
The jobs will be there. The careers will be there. We need to make sure that the workers, the skilled workers, are there too. And that's why today I'm announcing that a new Liberal government will cover the costs of apprenticeship training for Canada's skilled workers. And let me be clear what that means. We will invest in the entire pipeline of talent, from the workers themselves through to the labor unions, through to the post-secondary institutions, through to the employers and the provinces, all to ensure that our newly trained workers can go wherever they are most needed, that they're mobile, they're agile. To directly support apprentices, to directly support them, we will create an apprenticeship grant of up to $8,000 for registered apprentices. This removes a key financial barrier for those who want to enter the trades.
Now, at this point, it seems like he's just going to continuously copy everything that Pierre is putting out there. But Pierre called him out again on this, saying, look at him, he's plagiarizing me yet again.
I want you to forget They want you to forget the 10 years of growing bureaucracy and shrinking wages, the anti-development and anti-growth policies. They want you to think that somehow they will be different than they were in the last three terms. Now, I can't help but notice that Mr. Carney is contradicting himself again today as he plagiarizes my latest policy. On April the 1st, just 4 or 5 days ago, his government got rid of the apprenticeship grant. And today, after seeing that I support the grant and I'll bring it back, he's trying to plagiarize me yet again. You can't believe anything he says when he does one thing on April Fool's Day, and then not even a week later, he says the opposite. He is just like Justin Trudeau, and there will be no change if you give Liberals a 4th term.
Now, I gotta admit, it is getting pretty hard for me to keep track of all the things that Mark Carney keeps plagiarizing from Pierre in terms of his policies, but it doesn't seem to be stopping Pierre and his support, because today he was in BC and they were in a warehouse. The warehouse couldn't even house all of the people. Majority of the people were actually outside of the warehouse listening in to Pierre while he was on the stage. It was fantastic. And the pleb, this guy's following Pierre throughout the campaign. It seems like he was in Kingston, went to Oshawa the other night where we ran into each other. Then he flew to BC. He's going to be going to Alberta for Monday's rally. Like, this guy's all over the place. Anita Kay, she was there tonight in BC doing some interviews with some people there. A lot of great support, a lot of great coverage. And so I can't see how these polls make any sense that Pierre is trailing as much as he is. Now, another great moment from this press conference was when one of the reporters was asking Pierre about a Conservative candidate, Aaron Gunn. And you may know him from his YouTube. He does a lot of great documentaries. He actually opened my eyes to the whole West and East problems there, especially with the equalization. I wasn't aware of that until I saw his documentary. But they were questioning him on, I guess, some complaints that were coming in. And this was Pierre's response.
I want to ask you about Aaron Gunn, one of your candidates here. There's been a letter sent to the party, and I'll read it in part to you, denying the impacts of residential school, accusing Gunn of denying the impacts of residential schools and the generational trauma and genocide experienced by First Nations people. There are other concerns raised about his candidacy. Local mayors have said that they don't support him and don't think he should be a Conservative candidate. Do you still stand by Aaron Gunn as your candidate on the North Island?
Yes, I do, and the letter is false. He has not denied the impact of residential schools. That's just misinformation. In fact, he has said that he wants to continue to condemn the residential schools and build stronger partnerships with First Nations people to unlock our resources.
Now, to me, this was a great response, because I think people should be allowed to have these sort of questions if these were anything that Aaron Gunn had to say. There have been a lot of claims that there's been all these bodies found, but there actually hasn't been anything dug up. But this is besides the point, because Pierre actually did the exact same thing earlier in Kingston when a reporter tried to get him on another one of his candidates, a sort of a gotcha there, and Pierre put that person right in their place.
Your party has dropped 4 candidates in 2 days. How can Canadians be convinced of your vetting process for people you believe are fit to govern this country? And here in Kingston, how does that vetting process extend to Mr. Patterson for his previous connection to a church that supported conversion therapy?
Well, first of all, you omitted from your question that Mr. Patterson renounced conversion therapy years ago. And so the question is not accurate. Secondly, our vetting process is stronger than all the other parties. That's why we have a zero tolerance for anyone who acts unacceptably. This is the exact opposite of what we saw from Mr. Carney, who tried to keep on as a candidate someone who had asked for his Conservative opponent to be handed over to the Chinese Communist government on a bounty, to be imprisoned or maybe murdered because he was a dissident against that government. Mr. Carney said that it was a teachable moment. He's right. It taught all of us that Mark Carney will never put Canada first.
Now, as of recently, there have been a lot of Liberal and Conservative candidates that have had to be dropped. And as we are starting to get closer and closer to the election, things are going to have to tighten up for sure. They're not really going to have that much wiggle room in terms of finding replacements or putting new candidates in those positions. So anybody that the Conservatives start bringing into these folds, they really got to keep this vetting process up. But with that being said, folks, let me know what you think about all this. I'd love to hear from you guys. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.